Good morning, Turks and Caicos. Welcome to the program Expressions. I'm your host, Robert Hall, on this lovely Wednesday morning. It is so nice to be down here in Providenciales today, and I can assure you, you're going to have a very informative Expressions today. So do get ready with your calls and with your comments. I want to welcome all of my listeners and viewers wherever you happen to be, whichever part of the Turks and Caicos or the globe for that matter. If you are over in Salt Key, good morning to you. Down in Grand Turk, the nation's capital. Wow, we've had two significant events in the past couple of days. The opening of the Victoria Public Library and the commemoration of the death of Jakes McCartney and Jakes McCartney Day. A person whose life and contribution we should never forget. A flame has been lit. It's for us to keep it burning. And it's for the future generations to continue that relay. And someday, I guess, we'll end up at the promised land. Those of you down on the Big South, gosh, man, I heard you all had a swell time at regatta. Sorry I couldn't make it, but, there were those days when I never miss one. So you can forgive me now. How are you doing down there? And down to the Twin Islands of Middle and North Caicos. Let's see, I don't think you had much rain, so no crabs start crawling as yet, and I doubt you have any green corn. But anyway, there's always some of that nice big Caicos conch, all right? Welcome to Expressions. And you here in Providenciales. At one time, we just said Blue Hills, Five Keys, and the Bight. But guess what? It's spread all over the place now. I tell you. The other day I was just sharing a little bit of history, and people didn't realize that. You know why Five Keys is called Five Keys? Because there are 5 keys in front of the settlement. Hence 5 keys. Why is the Bight called the Bight? An indentation in the coastline. The Bight. And Blue Hills, of course, have a couple rolling hills. Now, because we're flat, almost any little elevation, we call them hills. It's all relative. But anyway, this is apparently a very long welcome. But by the way, if anyone is over on West Caicos, that was a historic spot one time, but I'll get to that some other time. And so it's Ambergris Keys, all making up the beautiful by nature Turks and Caicos Islands. And I want to welcome members of the diaspora wherever you happen to be, whether in the United Kingdom where there are growing numbers, but some are coming back home. But particularly our students there, good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. And be sure to come back and serve Turks and Caicos. Those of you who have been blessed to get a scholarship from the people. You see, we say from the government. And you see government as some sort of abstract entity. But it's actually from the people. So come back and serve the people. Those of you in the United States, the Caribbean, or the Bahamas, we have thousands, are welcome. Before we dive into the discussion, as we always do, let's begin with a word of prayer. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father and our God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for these beautiful islands we call home, Turks and the Caicos. We pray that you would continue to bless all those who lead, give them the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding to lead the people aright. As for the team that we have here today, involved in the informal settlements, we pray that you would guide them and that they would do their task diligently and as expeditiously as possible. We pray that you would bless our people in a special way. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. 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 Now, those of you who might have been following the release, I guess some of you are anxiously awaiting this show, where we'll be talking a lot about the Informal Settlement Unit, its functions, what they're doing, and much, much more. So get ready to participate. I have actually 3 guests, 2 on camera, and so I am going to allow them to introduce themselves rather than I doing so.
Thank you, Honorable Hall, for your introduction. And I apologize to your viewers and listeners that my voice is not as authoritative as yours. And I don't approach you in eloquence in any way. My name is Carlos Simons Casey. I'm the strategic lead at the Informal Settlements Unit. We will be telling you much more about the Informal Settlements Unit during the course of the program, and so I will leave those details until then. I am accompanied by Ms. Tamara Ford. I will let her introduce herself in a moment, and also by Mr. Jude Campbell, and I will say a few words about him because he's off camera, doesn't have a mic. So, Ms. Ford.
Thank you so much, Justice Simons. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hall. My name is Tamara Ford, and I am proud to represent the Informal Settlements Unit in my capacity as the leadership and management expert. And I'm also very grateful to be in the Turks and Caicos Islands with you good people as I hail from Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I want to welcome both of you to Expressions. It's not the first rodeo for Justice Simons, and I'm sure it won't be the last.
Definitely
Perhaps
not.
It's the first one for you, Ms. Ford, here on Expressions. I didn't take a look at your finger to see whether it's Miss or Mrs. But anyway, you do not necessarily have to respond. Chances are, if you're not Mrs., maybe by the time you leave here, you would be Mrs., or maybe you would remain. But anyway,
let me just say, before we go there, Mr. Campbell, Jude Campbell, is our communications director at the ISU, and is doing a wonderful job of getting the message out in a way that people can understand. So this interview and this presentation is largely his work, and I want to commend him for that.
well, Campbell is a familiar island name. I don't know if he has much relatives in Sander Point, but there are lots of Campbells there, I'll tell you.
Not to my knowledge.
But anyway, what I always say is this. We all came from one source. It's just that the ship dropped us off at different points. So we never knew. But anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure all of you in the public have long been waiting on this, because there has been considerable complaints throughout the years about the springing up of settlements throughout the islands, particularly here in Providenciales and in Grand Turk. And many of these are illegal structures. Some of them are eyesores. So today, Justice Simons and Ms. Ford, you're going to brief us about what surveys were done to assess the situation. As former Deputy Commissioner Albert Grant used to say, to be able to control the situation, you have to be able to assess it at first. So let us know then what's taking place in that regard, what the public can look forward to, etc. Justice Simons.
Well, let me lead off with this sort of general statement. It's a general statement about the mission of the Informal Settlements Unit. We abbreviate it as ISU every day. I mean, everything is abbreviated these days. So ISU means Informal Settlements Unit. Recently, and when I say recently, I mean within the last 3 years, launched by the government to address the growing proliferation of informal settlements throughout the TCI, and particularly Providenciales and Grand Turk, to a lesser extent, much lesser extent, in North Caicos. So the mission of the unit, the ISU, is to manage the heritage assets of Turks and Caicos, the heritage assets being principally the land, and working in collaboration with all interested parties to create communities that are safe for the residents and visitors, and that are capable of supporting future development and allows for improvement and encouraging growth. Those objectives are what we wish to bring to informal settlements, and bring them into line so far as possible with authorized settlements in other areas of the TCI. There are a number of initiatives underway which have to be undertaken. As you say, a former Commissioner of Police has said that you have to, in order to understand the problem, you have to be able to assess the problem. And one of those initiatives is the mapping of identified informal settlement sites. We've identified 51. 51 such sites.
Can you give a breakdown, island by island? Hope there isn't any informal settlement in the Salt Key and Middle Caicos.
No, not in Salt Key and Middle Caicos.
Okay.
9 in Grand Turk.
9.
Yes. 50,
41.
49 in Providenciales.
41.
41 in Providenciales, I'm sorry. So that's where we get the 50. And one in North Caicos.
1, okay.
Right? So that's the breakdown island by island. So there is that project, that effort to map those informal settlement sites and to record the number of structures both on each site and in total. In total, that number is now just over 6,000
Yes.
6,000 what?
structures.
6,000 structures?
6,000 structures.
That's unbelievable.
Across 50
Of
sites.
course, 50 sites, because we haven't, although we have done a flyover of North Caicos, we haven't analyzed that data as yet. So that's 6,000, I think it's 6,031. 31 is over those sites.
I mean, I'm astonished to hear that large number. I know that there has been the proliferation, as you said, but difficult to comprehend how we have, as it were, been asleep and allowing this to happen, to get to this stage.
It doesn't take very long.
Any idea about how many of these structures are complete?
Most of these structures are, well, you say complete, but we use the word occupied. Most of them are occupied. So that means that there are persons living in these 6,000 structures. Now, we don't know how many, and that, let me just get on to the next major effort that we're making, which is
really, as I digest that number, spinning in my head is, how then can you deal with this? Because if you were to carry out the mandate to make sure that these illegal structures are taken down, where will those people be living?
Yeah, well, that is a challenge. That is one of the challenges that we face, and that is one of the ways in which we are held to account by agencies such as the Human Rights Commission and the Red Cross, because of course nobody wants to see people being made homeless. through many times through no fault of their own. But that is one of the challenges that we face and that we have to cope with and deal with. And we are, shall we say, very mindful of the humanitarian aspect of the work that we're doing.
Now, I don't want to take you off the path that you're on, but I'll make this clear from where I stand. I certainly do not want to see any Turks and Caicos Islander dispossessed and certainly put out of their homes. But when it comes particularly to illegal immigrants, quite frankly, I have no tolerance, no patience, none whatsoever. Because this whole mentality about this being God's land is elsewhere also. And so we have to do what we can do to protect Turks and Caicos Islanders. That should be the goal. So far, I mean, I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I want to be assured no Turks and Caicos Islander has been put out of the place of residence.
You want that assurance?
If you can give it.
Yes, we can give that assurance. We can give that assurance in this way. The types of ownership of lands that we're dealing with, well, actually, the only two types of ownership of lands that we have in the TCI, private lands and Crown lands. If land isn't owned by the Crown, then it's owned by a private person. Okay? So far as Crown lands is concerned, and that is where most of the informal settlement activity has taken place and is taking place, the Crown Lands Unit has a policy of not removing structures that are at or that are roofed over and occupied. Okay? So if you are squatting on a Crown land parcel and you actually have a roof over your head and in occupation, those persons, for the moment, will not be disturbed.
For the moment.
Yes. Maybe I should say for now.
Same.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But, so those persons will not be disturbed. So those persons, whether they are, wherever whatever their origin, are not going to be disturbed. So far as private lands are concerned, private landowners, of course, are entitled to possession of their lands and entitled to abate the trespass that this activity constitutes. In order to ensure that there is an orderly removal of unlawful occupants in private land situations, the ISU has been available to coordinate the removal of structures in an orderly way and with the assistance of the police, for example, to ensure that there's no breach of the peace in that process. So far, no one, and I'm pausing because I'm trying to make sure that what I'm telling you is the truth. So far as I know, no one who has been in occupation, either on private land or on crown lands, has been displaced. Okay? You referenced in particular TC Islanders. Okay? That is not the criteria that we apply. We don't distinguish between TC Islanders and non-TC Islanders. You're either in lawful occupation or you're in unlawful occupation.
Stick a pin. I fully appreciate that legal point. However, you see, where I am concerned, if that individual, whatever nationality, who's not a Turks and Caicos Islander, came in, squatted on the piece of crown land, I want to ensure that that land, of course, it's so scarce now, is ever passed to that individual.
No, that will never happen.
As it were, through the back door.
No.
But on the other hand, and that's why I make the distinction, hopefully the Turks and Caicos Islander would be placed in a position where he can get title. Because, I mean, I have been consistent on expression, and whenever I get an opportunity, the same way the British could have given their loyalists fleeing the state thousands of acres of land, I see no reason why Turks and Caicos Islands government cannot unapologetically give Turks and Caicos Island a piece of land.
I will tell you the way in which homage to that idea has been paid repeatedly by the government. There have been a number of what we call amnesty programs. Those amnesty programs are directed to persons who have squatted either as a result of receiving a letter of offer or have otherwise assumed that they had permission to do what they're doing. That amnesty program is designed to benefit TC Islanders and no one else. So in order to qualify for that kind of amnesty, you have to be a TC Islander. And that is how the wheat is separated from the chaff. Maybe that's not a good imagery.
Oh, well.
I'm sorry.
Why not? Anyway, I might have taken you off your beaten path a little bit, but
I was coming to the second aspect, the second major effort that we're making, and it harkens back to your mention of, having to know the problem that you're dealing with in order to address it, and in this situation, that involves what we call the Social Needs Assessment Survey. Okay, so this is a survey which is much like a census survey. We have surveyors who go house to house, door to door, in the informal settlement communities and collect relevant data. Who lives there, their ages, where they're employed, where their country of origin. All of that data is being assessed, collected and assessed. We have completed the assessment at Robinson Street.
Yes.
And we have now moved to, what's the...
In Providenciales,
In Providenciales.
North Stubbs Creek Point.
North Stubbs Creek Point, again in Providenciales. We have also completed Sheridan Hill in our Grand Turk. Yeah. And that data is being currently being analyzed. But what we can say at the moment, from the initial review of the data, is that the inhabitants of informal settlements come from TCI, many come from Haiti, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, and in some cases even the UK. I mean,
The UK?
yes. Now, I don't know, that may be one drop in the ocean. We don't know. But that is a, and when you see the graphs, you will understand. It may be, not many from the UK, but there are TC Islanders, persons of Haitian origin,
Who no doubt are in the majority.
Bahamians, other Caribbean nationalities, and we are in the process of analyzing, continuing to collect and to analyze that data. We hope that that kind of data will inform policies aimed at improving community safety and sustainability, because the principal object of the ISU is to build safer, more sustainable communities in the TCI. So the data being collected in the social needs survey include demographic data, age, gender, ethnicity, a look at the size of the structures that are being inhabited, ownership and occupancy. In many cases, these structures are either built on Crown or private lands, and critically, public health and sanitary issues, because there is no safe disposal
Right.
of either domestic or other waste, and economic conditions, employment and income, for example. So that's an overview of the two major efforts that are being made by the ISU at the moment. And I will leave it there unless you have any preliminary questions. I know your listeners might have questions when the time comes.
Right,
But-
not quite yet.
Okay.
I certainly have sat and listened to you attentively, but I await to hear what Ms. Ford may
Yes,
have
Ms.
to say.
Ford has a couple of
Right.
topics that we would like her to address.
Please go right ahead.
Thank you so much. Excuse. As it regards the social needs assessment survey that Justice Simons just wonderfully laid out, we want to also alert members of the public that the data that will be analyzed will be collected and given to our in-house housing and urban planning specialist. Yes, Justice? For him to be able to create, as it were, conceptual designs, yes, as we move forward. With the social needs assessment survey, at this time we do have active social surveyors in North Stubbs Creek Point, also known as by the residents as Sandy Lane I think it is. And they are really, they're collecting as much data from, as Justice mentioned, house to house. If persons are not at home, what our social surveyors do is leave a notice on the door at some part of the structure. And that notice is to alert residents for them to give the ISU a call and set up a time when they will be available for us to collect that data. We are actively seeking out additional social surveyors. As Justice laid out, there are over 6,000 structures that we need to get to in a timely manner. And so the more boots on the ground, the faster we will be able to capture this data. So at this time, this is a call for anyone out there, preferably, not preferably, but we want as many people as we can. It will be an asset if these new applicants are able to speak another language. As Justice mentioned, we do have individuals who speak Creole in informal settlements, as well as Spanish. Yes, and so we want to be able to capture data from everyone, and so we need a well-rounded team in terms of language to ensure we break those language barriers and capture the necessary data.
Good. I'm sure the public have concerns about the privacy of these data. Just like when census is being done, a lot of people are reluctant to because they feel like this information may be used for other purposes than it really is intended. Can you disabuse the public of that notion?
Well, I think that would be that would be my call.
Okay.
Yeah, I can understand why people might feel that their data deserves to be treated confidentially, and we do as well. And we not only understand that concern, but we have been careful to ensure that that concern is met. The social surveyors are required to take oaths, the same oath that the census surveyors take. Our social needs assessment surveyors take that same oath to keep the information that they collect private. In addition, I can say that the ISU does not operate as an appendage either of the police or of border force. Okay? And so that information, the information that is being gathered by the social surveyors is not shared with border force and with the police. Having said that, as law-abiding citizens and a government-sponsored agency, if ISU personnel come across persons who are undocumented and really have no right to be present in the TCI, we are obliged to refer those persons to the border force for processing. And what happens to those persons after that is a matter for the border force and immigration law. But I would encourage the inhabitants of informal settlements, who overwhelmingly are decent, law-abiding, hard-working persons contributing to the economy of the islands. I would encourage every one of them to cooperate with the surveyors, safe in the knowledge that the information that they give will be treated as confidential and not used for other purposes.
Now let's get to some specifics if possible.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some 51 sites and about 6,000 structures. That sound rather alarming. I have seen some work that has been done in terms of demolition of some structures. Can you tell us, island by island, roughly how many such structures have been demolished thus far? And I say that against the background because in Grand Turk, they're constantly asking me, when is the ISU going to move to Sheridan Hill in Grand Turk? They're constantly asking, why is the process so slow? And sometimes I feel like saying, like Ronald Reagan said to the Soviets, tear them down. He told the Soviets, tear down that wall. And so, notwithstanding human rights and all these other concerns, mind you, sometimes I get impatient with them too, because they seem to be more concerned with those individuals' rights as opposed to the rights of us Turks and Caicos Islanders to live and enjoy our land without these illegal structures. So really, I myself, in some instances, become a little bit impatient when I see people putting up these structures almost overnight. Give us a little idea as to how many structures have been taken down here, and after that, perhaps, what's the plan to move it across the islands?
Well, I'll say this by way of introduction, and then I'll let Ms. Ford speak. We envisage that the work of the ISU will be accomplished in phases over a period of time, right? At the moment, the objective is to halt and reverse the spread of informal settlement activity throughout the islands, right? At the moment, we are still in the halt phase of the program. We are still trying to educate people about the dangers of building without planning approval, without owning the land on which you're building, without access to utilities, without the capacity to ensure waste collection and disposal. And so that's really where we are at the moment. As so far as Crown lands concerned, the policy, as I mentioned earlier, is to not disturb structures that are roofed over and occupied, but to remove structures that are at or below belt beam level on Crown lands. And persons listening in and persons who may have an inclination to, to do what we're saying you should not do, we say, do not do it. That structure is going to be removed. So whatever money you invest in it is going to be lost to you. We have consistently removed structures that are at or below belt beam level and that are unoccupied. And some of them have caused publicity in the press and in social media. But we are determined that the proliferation needs to stop. It must stop. And it can only stop if people realize that it is wrong and that they will lose whatever investment they put into it. Now, you asked about numbers. Ms. Ford, are you able to speak to any numbers?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that's something that the Crown Land Unit would definitely have, and it's important for us to state at this time that the Informal Settlement Unit, as Justice mentioned earlier on when the interview began, is a coordinating agency, and we coordinate the efforts of the Crown Land Unit and the Physical Planning Department. So those numbers will most assuredly be lodged at the Crown Land Unit, and that's where I'll leave it.
All right, because like I say, the public sentiments is like the car is in neutral, but they want you to see you going forward in gear, forward, not reverse. Any reverse is to reverse the numbers of structures.
Let me just say this. I understand the frustration, right? But I would urge persons who feel that frustration to recognize that this is a problem that has developed over the last 30 years, at least. Dockyard, the famous dockyard, which is the most complete and long established settlement, that began in the late 1980s. So it is a problem that has developed over the past 30 years. It is not going to be solved in 2 or 3 or 4 years. Also, there are economic factors driving the problem. The Turks and Caicos economy has grown tremendously in that 30 years. And labor is needed to service that economy. A lot of the people who live in these informal settlements are people who work in the hotel and resort industry, which is, the bread and butter of the TCI economy. So the government has taken note of this, and part of the process that the ISU will in due course be coming to consider is the regularization of these informal persons in these informal settlements. The planning of informal settlements to bring them within the law, the planning laws, and so forth. And we have on staff at the ISU urban planners whose job it is to see how best these informal settlements can be regularized to bring them into compliance with TCI law. That will include the granting of some kind of title. We don't know at the moment whether it would be a certificate of comfort, a lease, a license, but something for persons who can be regularized.
I know that Dockyard is perhaps the largest of any of the informal settlements. And like you rightly said, that has sprung up not just yesterday, but over several years. Question though is, how much of it is private compared to Crown? Because I know in terms of executing, it's one thing dealing with Crown land, but with private land, you have to have the cooperation of the landowners. In fact, you basically assist them, if anything. What sort of percentage of that land is Crown versus private?
Dockland is exclusively private land.
Exclusively
Dockyard.
private? Yes, exclusively.
Yeah, exclusively private.
Interesting.
I mean, if there may be one or two Crown land parcels
Right.
bordering the Dockyard, the principal settlement,
Yes.
but it's almost entirely private lands.
Yes.
And it is to be, let me put it this way, the ISU is not ready to deal with the Dockyard situation at the moment.
I know it's very, very complicated,
Yeah.
even from the way the structures are. I mean, so many different buildings are sort of amalgamated into one structure.
Well, I mean, if you look at,
I just don't know how it's
if
allowed.
you look at an aerial image of it, right? I mean, the density is, I don't know. I mean, 5 times what is permitted by planning regulations.
I mean, I have been there, despite the stigma attached and the fear people have. I've been there many, many, many times, and it's really a little city to itself. I'll put it that way.
is.
And bluntly speaking, it's a little Haiti. I mean, so many little outdoor markets and stalls and this, that, and the other. Gosh, and they have almost everything there. I just don't know how that one is going to be solved. That's a major one.
You spoke earlier about proliferation, and I can say this, that we did a flyover in Dockyard.
By drone or aircraft?
Drone.
Drone.
A flyover, it would have been late 24, right? And we were able to establish a number of structures, right? We did a flyover 6 months later, and there were 72 more structures.
72 more.
Yes. So that gives you an idea of the rapidity with which these structures can be erected almost overnight.
Well, let me say this. We just passed a $500 million budget. That means planning should be able to have the manpower to do more and prevent these things, because that's the problem. You see, as they say, big oak trees grow from the lake on. And if they stop it at its infancy, then it wouldn't reach to where it's at right now. And I believe government has to get tough and go behind the private landowners, if anything, because they ought to know what's going on their properties. And if they can't stop it, then enlist the support of government. Because if you 6 months ago got 70 more, 70 more structures than you had before, I would imagine the next 6 months you just might find another 70. And so this, this is really out of hand. Something has to be done.
What it indicates to us is that we need to continue with the message of do not build without planning permission. Do not build if you do not own the land on which you're building. But that message is being drowned, if you like, in the need for the housing that these people so desperately seek. I'm not, particularly in my position, I'm not finding excuses, but rather trying to explain a phenomenon that many people would not understand. Why would you build a house on land that you do not own? It makes no sense. And we're saying to them, stop doing it. It's going to be removed. Those 70 structures, what can you do with them except, you cannot go to the bank and get a loan. You cannot, it's worthless, and they will be removed. When the time comes, they will be removed.
Well, the question is of course, when and what time?
Yeah.
Because you see, as one set of persons succeed, it sort of incentivizes somebody else to go and do the same thing. And I'll hear Turks and Caicos Islands that say that to me every day in Grand Turk. And unfortunately, because I'm host of Expressions, I get beaten up when it should be the government or somebody else. But when they can't see them, it's like they take it out on me, But I think we get to the stage where we've got to stop asking people to just stop mashing my toe. You got to push them off your toes. We get to that point where we're about to open the phone lines, because I'm sure
there are two other points that I would like to
go right ahead, sir.
Introduce. The ISU will also be hosting, if you like, a community engagement event in Silverado Wells. Silverado Wells is a community in the Five Keys area. And this is an effort to involve the people of communities in the work of the ISU, to sort of extend to them the goodwill of the ISU, and to offer them the opportunity to meet and have attention given to them by dentists, eye doctors, healthcare professionals, and so forth. Ms. Ford will tell you much more about that. She led a walkabout in Silverado Wells yesterday, to distribute flyers and introduce people to the caravan, and she'll tell you more about that.
Thanks, Justice.
Sure.
Yeah, this is one of the unique initiatives of the ISU as we continue to drive the point home about that Justice mentioned, that we don't want anyone else to build on land that is not your own. It's a message. It's part of our message at the Informal Settlement Unit. To get to that place, as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Hall, we need to assess. But even before we assess, and this is why it seems as though it's a long process, but to us who staff the ISU, we are certainly moving along in that process. Before we can assess what exactly exists within each informal settlement site, we are engaging members of those communities, either through door-to-door interactions with the wonderful ISU consultant staff, and not just the consultants, but also the administrative staff arm of the ISU. And we go into these communities letting them know what the ISU is all about, what are the expectations in terms of the social needs assessment survey and our social surveyors coming into the areas. For those what we consider smaller sites, we just do the door-to-door speaking with residents. But for the largest informal settlement sites, we conduct the community outreach caravan. This is to help build trust with members of the communities, these residents, for them to be more welcoming to our social surveyors as they come in. At the caravan, they get the information about what the social needs assessment survey is all about, what the intention of the data gathered. And we also have partnered with government and external stakeholders who are going to be present this Saturday just off Halbert Road in Silverado Wells from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And Justice mentioned a few of the agencies that will be present. We do have, and if I'll be permitted at this time to list those agencies, we have the Health Promotion and Advocacy Unit, which is housed within the Ministry of Health and Human Services. We have the Rotary Club of Providenciales would also be there volunteering their service, as well as the Rotaract Club of Providenciales. We also have representation from the Department of Disaster Management and Emergencies, as well as the TCI Red Cross Society, and they will be providing disaster management resources and information. The Red Cross is also piqued to offer first aid information and resources as well. We have a representation from the Turks and Caicos Islands Diabetics Association, and from the beginning of our journey with these caravans last November 2024, these agencies have been in partnership with us. We've also had coming on board with us this year at our second at our second community outreach caravan last March, we had the addition of the Paradise Smiles Dental Clinic offering dental services. We've also had the addition of the free legal aid clinic put on by the TCI Bar Council. Yes, so we have legal services as well. And the Department of Social Development and Welfare has also been in partnership with us to provide information with regard to the services that they house within their department. And for the first time, we have the addition of Grace Bay Medical, the optometry section, where the optometrist will be providing eye screening services this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Silverado Wells community. Yes, so it's a large undertaking and a lot of services that we bring to residents in these varying communities. And as I mentioned, we started last November. That was in Robinson Street. And last March, we had it at North Stubbs Creek Point. And that's where our current social surveyors are undertaking data collection.
Since I'm not too familiar with this, can you provide a little description? Because I don't think there's a hall. Is it that you're going to have a series of tents or what?
Yes. We do have an event layout.
Because you're talking about a large number of persons with special skills, and I'm sure they'll have to have certain equipment and all the rest of it.
Certainly. We do have an event layout that was worked on by our IT staff and our communications expert, Jude. that we have the tents laid out,
Okay.
and each tent will be assigned to one of our partners to provide services. We will have a registration tent, at which point we will be taking the names and contact information of the individuals who will be accessing the services. So we're trying to make it as uniformed but as wide as possible in terms of the services. So we're asking them to come to the registration tent. We capture that information, and then we will filter all our participants through each tent as they go to access all the services that are provided to them on the day.
Great. Unless there are other points you want to raise right now, because I'm anxious to open the phone lines to see what the public has to say.
That's it. Yeah, I'm anxious to hear from the public as well.
Okay. Now, Joe Public, it's your time. Whenever you see me at the supermarkets, or if I'm cooling out somewhere, you're telling me this, telling me that. Let's hear it now. The number to call, 946-2007, 1-900-2222-007. Let's see who will be first up. Will it be Foggy? Or will it be Miss Molly at 5 Keys? Let's see. Or one of the Lances from the Bite. Or Mr. Rigby down in Whelan. Let's see who'll be first. All who have been watching and listening, my guests today are individuals from the Informal Settlement Unit. They have been explaining their mission and some of the activities that they have undertaken thus far. I felt sure that you have questions, and here is the opportunity. Again, 946-2007, 1-900-2222-007. Don't tell me, I mean, I know that the panel has acquitted themselves very well, but is it that they've done so well that you have no questions? I have to wonder. Well, as you do know, I am not the type of person that like to keep people waiting, and neither do I like waiting on folks. So I'll just give you a few more seconds, and if not, then we will wind up this segment of the program. It really, really surprises me, and like I often say back in Grand Turk, now that I've given your opportunity to ask your question and I got the right people here, when you see me, wherever, don't ask me nothing. All right? Let me use my Turks Island gibberish. Don't ask me nothing, because this is your opportunity. And that's the problem I find with Turks and Caicos people. When the time comes for them to speak up, they hardly do. And let alone when it's time for them to attend, you can look for almost the same faces. Sometimes I really wonder if Turks and Caicos Islanders know what the hell they want, to tell you the truth. You know? They complain about their informal settlements. When you start knocking them down, why you knock down Auntie Soon or Jane on? Illegal. Okay. Got to do what has to be done. The crime situation has been almost out of control. Policemen come, you got some, I don't know how to describe them. Some people say I shouldn't call them ignorant, but I will still say that's damn ignorance. I mean, if you can't handle it, help come now, you're going to ask who you bring them for? Encourage your sons and daughters to join them. But many of you know, you don't want your son and daughter to be no prison warden and be no police. You want them to move on to other profession. So somebody got to do it. Anyway, it looked like I flushed somebody out of the woodwork. So one caller, caller, go right ahead.
And morning to Justice Simon and the rest of the panel. I'm just calling to chime in because you made a suggestion that, or you made a quote that oak trees grow from small acorns, And these acorn of illegal settlements springing up, especially in Provo, has been here for years and years and years. My question is, where has the planning department been?
Background, because we can hardly hear you. Yeah, just turn down whatever there is that's causing the noise in the background, and then go ahead, because we really love to hear what you have to say.
Okay, can you hear me more better now?
That's better.
Turn off his radio.
I guess whatever it is you're trying to listen to yourself, just speak into your phone and cut off whatever else there is and call back. All right, we've lost that one. 946-2007 or 1-900-2222-007. Let's see if there are any other calls. Unfortunately, we missed out on that one.
Hello.
Good morning, caller.
Mr. Hall. Good morning, sir. Mr. Hall, I've heard the presentation from the honorable gentleman, and I have a few concerns. I understand what the mandate of the unit is. They're dealing with existing structures and finding an amicable way of addressing the situation. I understand. I want to put forward some hypotheticals because this situation, based on how we are addressing it, is going to take comparatively longer than it needs to. Because if you're telling me in order for us to move those persons that were illegally settled on crown land and private property, we have to find alternate living arrangements in order to move them. In a country where we are trying to, at this present time, put together some sort of social housing situation for our own people, this seems like a prolonged situation in terms of addressing. Now, I want to ask this question twofold. If you're here and you're a visitor to our country from the context of you're on a work permit, am I unlawful if I cancel your work permit because you circumvented the process for the issuance of the work permit? The issuance of the work permit mandated that the person that signed for you had to provide living accommodation. And because that person did not provide living accommodation, you've defaulted one of the criteria in order for you to issue the work permit. And so if I go through that particular route and I cancel the work permit because you are not living up to the obligation, you have no legal right now to reside in the country. And so that negates the whole situation of your accommodation. And so am I unlawful if I choose to take that particular direction as a country and say, because you are now being forceful, we've asked you to move on a voluntary basis, you've decided that you're not going to do so. Would it be wrong for us to take this particular direction to deal with these particular issues as it relates to non-residents that are being resistant to government policy and to continue to reside on farmland? And the second component of this is what involvement does the unit have with regards to people that are now building new structures? Is it a planning issue, or does that as well fall under the informal settlement?
Thank you very much. We couldn't hear all of it clearly, but I suppose there are some bits of it that you may be able to respond to, Justice Simon and Ms. Ford.
Let me respond to the last bit first of all, because that's the bit that I heard more clearly than others. The construction of new buildings remains a planning issue. Although the ISU does collaborate with planning in the carrying out of their work, service of notices, inspection of structures, removal of structures. And the ISU is able to do that because we are able to bring together the whole the whole of the government agencies that are concerned with this issue. But essentially, that remains a planning matter. What we will say from both from planning and the ISU point of view is that people ought not to build without planning permission. It is against the law. You, under the planning, physical planning ordinance, you are not permitted even to clear land without planning permission. So please don't do it. And if someone is trying to sell you land, make sure that that person has the title that he's offering or she is offering to sell you. Otherwise, you're going to be duped, and you're going to lose your investment. So the message from the ISU is stop irregular building. Now, you also mentioned about crown lands, and you mentioned about employers. There is an obligation on employers to provide housing for the people that they have on work permits, but it is a very difficult obligation to enforce, and we're looking at ways in which the law imposing this obligation may be clarified to ensure that employers abide by their obligations. That would assist, because then people who are living in these settlements may be able to upgrade their accommodations, may be able to move away to more formal settlement environments. All of these things are being looked into, I assure you, but it's going to take time. It's simply going to take some time.
Now, there are some hotels that have built residences for their employees. Mm-hmm. May not be enough, but just for example, take a Beaches or a Seven Stars. Mm-hmm. If you were to encounter one of their employees constructing such buildings or encroaching on Crown land, how difficult is it then to go to Beaches or the Seven Stars and say, listen, you are obligated to provide housing. Why is this person not being provided for? Can you enlighten me as to what legal difficulty there is?
I don't have the ordinance before me at the moment, so it's very difficult to answer that question. But the law is not as clear-cut as we would like it to be. And besides, if we were to come across a person constructing a building unlawfully on Crown lands, we would simply remove the building. We would not be inquiring as to where that person is employed, if you know what I mean.
I hear you. But as you talk about the law, it would seem to me like some of these drafters perhaps draft these laws for the benefit of lawyers. I'm not throwing anything at you, but ever so often there seems to be some loophole there. Anyway, let's see if there are any other calls. If not, then I'm going to ask both of you to make your closing comments. A last call, not for alcohol, but for ISU. It is too hot, so I urge you guys out there, many of you are under the tree, be careful about your consumption. Of course, if it's water, lemonade, that's fine. And I don't mean what people euphemistically call lemonade, all right? Because I tell you, to add that to the heat that's on, you got to be careful. The number to call 1-900-2222-007, 946-2007. I have been for the past hour and maybe 20 minutes sitting with Justice Simons from the Informal Settlement Unit and Ms. Ford, and certainly the public ought to have garnered a great deal of information. There seem to be no more calls, so I'm going to ask you all to make your closing comments. Justice Simons, you first. Normally we say ladies first, but this time I defer to the goodly justice.
Thank you. First of all, let me say thank you very much for coming to be with us in Providenciales today. Otherwise, you know, we would have been in Grand Turk, wouldn't we?
And that would have been a pleasure to have you there too. Anyway, because I tell you, sometimes those of us in Grand Turk would wish to see more coming that side as opposed to coming down here. But anyway, no problem.
I would like to encourage the people, first of all, and I'm sure Ms. Ford will reiterate what I say here, the people of Five Keys, Silverado Wells, to come out to the community caravan on Saturday. Take advantage of the services that are on offer for free, and to regard the ISU and its staff as your friends. We want to help. Our objective is to build safer, more sustainable communities in the TCI. In order to do that, we need to learn about, you know, you and your environment and surroundings, and so forth. And that brings me to the social needs assessment survey. And generally, I want to say to the inhabitants of informal settlements, and generally to the people of the TCI, but particularly to informal settlement inhabitants, to please cooperate with the surveyors who will be coming around, and no need to be cautious or suspicious. The information you give will be treated in confidence and will be very useful in helping to regularize your situation. So Silverado Wells, we hope to see you out on Saturday. Thanks.
Before Ms. Ford, actually, after I called for closing comments, I saw 2 texts come in. Should I put that to you, or let's move on?
No, we can answer those.
Okay, all right, let's have it then. This person says, good morning, Mr. Hall. I tried to call, but the system seems to be giving some issues. My question is, where is the planning department when all this illegal development? Planning should have a task force set up immediately to deal with these development from the start. Look in Five Keys, every corner has a shop and an illegal house. The ISU should be working to deal with old settlements. Thanks. That's one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, what I say to that is I quite understand that sentiment. I think it would be unfair to unburden all of the blame on planning for a long time. The planning, and still, the planning department has been undermanned, understaffed, and this is the result of, you know, what the underfunding that government departments have suffered over many years under different governments. Now the government has taken a conscious effort to redress these problems, and that comes in the form of the ISU coordinating Crown Lands, planning, police, all of the interested government agencies to address these concerns.
And the next one was, will the government be within its rights to cancel work permits for persons living in these informal settlements, seeing as work permit ordinance says that the employer is responsible for providing accommodations to the employee?
No, the short answer to that is no.
All right. Thanks very much. Ms. Ford, your closing comments.
At the ISU, we are thrilled to have a relationship with all the government agencies that have a responsibility to deal with land and construction within the TCI. And we are grateful to the TCIG for birthing the ISU. We're grateful to Justice Simons for leading us down this necessary path as we fulfill our vision to create and build safer, more sustainable communities in the TCI to ensure we maintain the beautiful by nature appeal that the TCI does indeed have. This work cannot be done without the ardent work of all staff members at the ISU, and so I'm taking this moment to thank our staff. But we also want to thank you, Mr. Hall, for coming in, as Justice said, and for entertaining us in this program, for asking the pertinent questions and allowing your listenership to get a little more information about what the ISU does and part of our mandate. And as I close, I am going to thank in advance your listeners and those that will hear through your listeners what the ISU is all about and what we are seeking to do, and ensure that they partner with us as our social surveyors, come out door to door to within the informal settlements. We are currently, again, in North Stubbs Creek Point, collecting data, and we're asking and continuing to thank those residents and ask those who have not yet heard about it to indeed give the information graciously to our social surveyors. And we look forward to seeing all of the residents within Silverado Wells to come out, look for the white tents, listen to hear the music, and come on down. Filter yourself through that community. Come meet us just off Halbers Road this Saturday, the 31st of May, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come and access all the free services we have to offer.
Justice Simon, Ms. Ford, and Mr. Campbell, I certainly want to thank you all for being my guest on Expressions today. And as whenever you feel there is a need to, feel free to call me, whether you come to Grand Turk or I come down here. It has been a great pleasure. Continue the work you're doing, and hope that we can see an accelerated pace of the removal of some of these illegal structures. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
We're going to take a little break and revert to the station in Grand Turk while I escort my guests. Welcome back to Expressions. I'm your host, Robert Hall. My guests have since departed, so now I'm left alone. I am going to share some thoughts with you, and I am going to suggest if you have any questions or comments, not necessarily pertaining to Informal Settlement Unit, you can start WhatsApping them to me at 244-7332. 244-7332. Now, piggybacking on some of the information provided by the ISU, that there were some 6,000, imagine that, 6,000 illegal structures. When I heard that, it reminded me of a figure that has been bandied about during the election campaign about the government building 6,000 houses in the next 5 years. I must say I'm doubtful about that number. I don't think it's realistic. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I doubt it is realistic. I wonder if that's where they got that number from. But if that is the case, and let's say the majority of these illegal structures are to be taken down, it simply means we will need more than 600,000. So it's a good time, those of you with good pocket change, start investing in housing. Because you know very well, particularly here in Providenciales, the rents are outrageous, unaffordable. And some of you will want to talk about the high price of getting things in. But for basic apartments, $1,500 and so on, that is utterly ridiculous. And you all can do better than that. Consider many of the single mothers, some with 2, 3 children. They can hardly afford to sleep well because of the conditions in which some of them have to live. And while I find no excuse for those who build illegally, there are some who take that option because they just cannot afford. And I was saying to a friend the other day, we have, I'm sure, about 100 churches in Turks and Caicos. I saw where somebody said just on Bay Road, there are about, here in Providenciales, there are about a dozen. Some of these churches are quite wealthy, have good bank accounts. Why don't they take their Christian ministry a step further? They should be helping to provide food for those who are hungry, clothes for those who are naked, shelter for those who are homeless. It's one thing preaching in church on Sunday or Saturday, as the case might be. Yes, catering to the spiritual needs of a person is important, but equally so are the other needs that the person has. And I wonder if some of these preachers and prophets and priests and what have you do go around and visit their congregants and see the conditions in which they lived. I wonder what some of you will tell God about your stewardship when dealing with some of them. Some of the churches have lands apart from those on which they have their church buildings. But they ought to be able to obtain land elsewhere on the private market and get in the housing business, and in so doing help their own people. Provident Limited Is there a thing as corporate conscience? You're the largest private landholding company in the Turks and Caicos. At thousands of acres of land years ago. Made millions off the land. Can't you provide some social housing for our people? The land values have skyrocketed. So your profit margins have increased tremendously. You see, it is things like this that cause governments elsewhere begin to look at alternate methods of getting more from their natural resources for their people. Africa is waking up. When will Turks and Caicos wake up? Will we continue to do things as we've always done? I have enjoyed virtually every day of my 73 years and do not wish to be younger if it was possible. But if it was possible now, on the other hand, with the experience that I have now, I wish I was about 20 years younger. Because I tell you, there are lots of things in this country I would certainly do differently from what we've done in the past. And while our coffers are being filled with dollars, as far as our budget is concerned, and the budget for the first time has exceeded $500 million, and we should really be proud of the growth in that regard, because like I said, back in the 60s when it was only less than $500,000, imagine that, for the entire Turks and Caicos. So we have come a mighty long way. But in coming this mighty long way, we have left many individuals behind. We have allowed many individuals to fall through the crack, so to speak. And so, belatedly now, we're trying to mend the fences. But there's some, in my view, almost radical decisions that need to be made. And quite frankly, I don't think our politicians today are of that mold. I am not suggesting that I am the answer, but I only say this in the context that I said if I was 20 years younger, what I would have done. I'm done with politics. I'm thankful for the opportunity I've had. I'm always eternally grateful to the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands and to the party which I was associated with. And I am thankful that when I look back, of course, there are many lives that I've touched. There are many institutions that have helped to grow. And like I often say, I did the best I could with what I had. But certainly, with the experience I have today, if it were possible, would do a whole lot different. And that's why I go back to that central point that I've been hammering all along about empowering Turks and Caicos Islanders, and how do we do that? Because unless we do that, we are courting social unrest. When a people sit back and see others prospering and they are left behind, then you can look for problems. Honorable Premier, as you try to focus on economic advancement and the big picture, the global picture, I ask you and your colleagues not to forget the little man. Because sometimes we look at the macro and forget the micro. but that is extremely important. There is no reason why anyone in this country should be sleeping in an old vehicle or sleeping in some dilapidated, filthy building. No Turks and Caicos Islander. I'm not accounting for illegal people who come in and catch just about anywhere they feel like, to use the Jamaican expressions. No, I'm talking about Turks and Caicos Islanders. And that's why I constantly hammered the point that all Crown land should be put in a Crown, in a bank, so to speak, and establish a housing and mortgage corporation. I know there's a mortgage thing being established, but let me explain what I mean by this. So every stick of land in that Crown bank, so to speak, land bank, could be subdivided, and every Turks and Caicos Islander at the requisite age ought to be entitled to one piece of land to build their private residence. I'm not dealing with the commercial side right now. That is extremely important. And it can work along with government's suggestion about not just giving a piece of dirt, but a house to move into. That's great. But there will always, like the Premier said in his budget address, be some who want to get a piece of land and to do what they need to do. Will the government have the kind of intestinal fortitude to give the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands, that is, the Turks and Caicos Islanders, a piece of Crown land at minimal cost? And I emphasize that minimal cost. Don't tell me about market value and all the rest. The British were not concerned with market value when they were giving their people thousands of acres of land. I am not sure if market value was even taken into consideration when thousands of acres was given to Provident Limited. And so we should find no excuse. This land is ours. Call it Crown land because the Crown holds it in trust for all of us. And I'm not talking about me. I'm on my way out. I'm talking about many, the young people, future generations. For instance, once you have that mortgage corporation established alongside with that land bank, if a Turks and Caicos Islander gets a piece of Crown land, he would sign a covenant whereby if he runs into difficulty and cannot complete his project, then the mortgage corporation has the right to purchase that unfinished building. That means that land will continue to be there for future or for other Turks and Caicos Islanders. But as it stands now, if there is a problem, then the commercial bank steps in, and then you know the highest bidder most time is not going to be us. And that land goes out just like that. And that is why I emphasize that that is what we should be doing with all Crown land. The Bahamas several years ago also established a hotel corporation. I forget the complete terminology. But what that allowed for If a developer is building a hotel and it is stalled for so long, then under the development agreement, the government has a major role to play. And they cannot just walk away like we have seen with several projects in TCI. Furthermore, if there was a functioning hotel, and that is years ago in the Bahamas during the Pinling's time, I don't know if it's still so, and that hotel, they decide for whatever reason, real estate or otherwise, tax purpose or otherwise, to close for indefinite periods, the government then has a right to acquire it, because it is essential to provide employment for the people. And so you could imagine a major hotel employing 200-300 persons closing down. That would have a significant impact on the economy and on the livelihood of people. Take in Grand Turk. The Guanahani has been closed for quite some time. And the owners seem to be just sitting there on that property, doing nothing about it, when Grand Turk is short of hotel rooms. One of the chief reasons why we can't get direct international flights. And that's why I asked government to pass the necessary legislation that things like this cannot occur. I can understand if within reason they close, say for refurbishment, 2-3 months, as the case might be, or even say up to 6 months, whether it's for expansion. But to simply just close and walk away, and in some cases not even giving the workers what they are due, then government must step in to safeguard the interests of the people. Furthermore, by way of empowering our people, I am a proponent of an annual dividend program. You might have heard me talk about it before. The playing field here is not level, and it's not going to be easy to level it, because the expatriates, they tend to have more wealth than the average local individuals. And there are some from the Caribbean area who have been banding together and purchasing properties and building homes. I admire them for that. But where does the Turks and Caicos Islander fit into that? I suggest through the annual dividend program, and I'm not talking about stimulus. Stimulus now and again, if there's a hurricane or some disaster, major international occurrence that affects the cost of living, perhaps like a great fuel crisis and what have you, that's fine. But take, for instance, now, there's a budget of, I think, some $540 million. Okay? But let's say by good fortune, we were able in the financial year 25-26 to raise $600 million. That's 60 million different from what they are projecting. I see no reason why, be it 20, 30, or 40, a significant portion of that could not be divided among Turks and Caicos Islanders. The 15 to 20,000 of us, you can see with quick mathematics that $20 million or $40 million could make a significant difference and narrow, as I said, that gap between the Turks and Caicos Islands and the others. And we must resist every pressure from the United Kingdom that every little thing has to be shared with others. Because in the early years, we were the ones who grew the sisal, who grew the cotton, who collected the sponges, who worked the salt ponds, who went fishing, who farmed the rocky, thin soils, little no rain. Why shouldn't we be rewarded? These are the kind of changes that I'm talking about. It may sound radical, and even if they say it's more socialistic, then so be it. It's a matter of bettering the lives of our people. I'm going to pause. If anyone has a comment, the calls have not been coming in too clearly, but we only have just a few minutes left. So you may text me your view, WhatsApp, 244-7332, or you may call in 946-2007. Now I want to make it clear. What I say are just my views. And it's not intended for politics, because I'm done with that. Done with it. And like I often say, there isn't much that I ask this government or any government for Robert Hall. I am talking about for the children of the land. I'm fairly content the few evenings, like my late father used to say, that I have left. I thank God. And I enjoy every day of it. And like I say, even with my bad knees, I'm still enjoying some of the best times of my life. Oh yeah. And like Bundy often say, hopefully tomorrow will even be better. You see, for some of you, you will never be content because of greed. Never let greed poison your soul. I'm not saying don't be ambitious, don't strive to better yourself. Yes, do that. But some of you go overboard, and in so doing, run foul of the law, hurt other people in the process, damage your own character, damage your health, and you're not able to enjoy that wealth that you're working so hard to amass. Take it one step at a time. Do what you can and make the best of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for joining me today on Expressions with my guest earlier, and hopefully in the last half hour or so, you were able to listen to me, although I have gotten no response, but you can tell me even afterwards if some of my suggestions do resonate with you. At least one person has just WhatsApped me to say, "Good morning, Mr. Hall. I like it when you talk in good sense." Is there a thing as bad sense? Or are you saying I just talk nonsense sometime? Tell me. Anyway, I'm just playing with you, Mr. Silver. And anyway, he says, I agree 100% what you just said about land. Thank you very much. All right. This person called for the number for expressions, 946-2007. Okay, I guess he has called earlier. All right. I don't see any other texts or calls coming in. So again, I want to thank you for being with me today. And do join me again on Friday, God's Space Life, when we hope to have yet another informative, educational, and entertaining expressions. Thank you. Have a great day. God bless you.